The operation of the central locking on these Golfs is a little on the unusual side of things, especially by comparison to modern cars. It works through vacuum or air pressure. So unfortunately it's not working in this car, so let's see if we can find out why that is. Now I know it's a bit of a first world problem when the central locking on your classic car doesn't work, but it has it, so why shouldn't it work? So let's get to the bottom of it. There are a few key components on this system. In actual fact, it's quite simple and very, very clever. Basically what there is there's a compressor in the boot of the car, which we'll look at in a minute. And on the driver's door, there's an electrical switch. And what happens is you turn the key, it operates the electrical switch, which operates the compressor. And throughout the rest of the car, including the fuel filler cap, by the way, there are air lines and little diaphragms. And the diaphragms either get inflated or compressed by either pressure from the compressor, or it'll draw a vacuum depending on which way it runs. There's a valve on the top of it in actual fact. So first thing we need to do is we need to have a look and see if the electrical connection in the door is working. So let's have a look at that. Now don't break into a cold sweat here folks, okay? Without having to take the door card off, straight away you can see if this is actually working or not. But first of all, what you need to do is you just need to push that in there, okay? So the locking mechanism essentially thinks the door is locked or closed. Now what we can do is, if you have a look in here, you can see the electrical switch. So you probably get a better idea of it than I do. But that's it essentially, okay? Now what we're going to do is I'm going to fish my big meat fists in here and I'm going to push that down, okay? And we're going to lock the door. Now the fact that the bolt there moved down when I locked it down here at the switch means that the rod is in place for that. So unless it's an electrical issue, the problem is not with our it's not with the rod anyway. Now I know I had a problem with the central locking in this car before, but that was that was just a case of actually reattaching the rod and getting a new clip for it. So in this case, that's not the problem. The electrical connection is actually accessible there as well. So what you can do is you can take that off, you can clean it, and you can refit it, and basically a little bit of contact cleaner. As far as contact cleaner is concerned, I like to go with either Servicol Super 10, I think it's called, or Deoxit. Now Deoxit's very, very expensive, but it's really, really good stuff. And especially if you're ever doing things like old hi-fi restorations or anything like that, it's worth investing in the good stuff. The Halford's electrical contact cleaner is useless. I can tell you that now. I've used it before. It does nothing. Maybe removes a little bit of dust, but that's about the extent of it. So good contact cleaner is definitely worth investing in. The next sensible thing to look at here is the fuse for the central locking. Now this is the Central Electric 2 system. So I didn't even know if CE1 cars actually ever had central locking, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. This one is a CE2. So we have the cover here which tells us which fuse number it is. So let's have a look and see. That's helpful, it's not listed. Google to the rescue. It's fuse number 21 actually. It's the same as the one for the interior light, given the fact that the interior light is actually working in this car, albeit intermittently. That's another thing I need to sort out, is the door switch there. It is working though. That's not going to be our issue, so it's not the fuse. Anyway, I had a look and it is intact, so not the fuse. So next thing to do is we're going to have a look at the compressor in the boot. Now this is a funny little thing, you'll see what I mean now in a second. So we are now looking at the rear left light, in case you didn't know. If you didn't know, I'd be a little worried. And if you come around in the inside of the boot, there is our cover and sound insulation for the compressor. So just unhook that, take that off, and there within is the compressor. So now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take off that electrical connector, and we're going to see if we have rusty contacts. Now, I know that there's a little bit of a water leak from the rear light cluster into this area here, so water may have gotten at the compressor, and I'm hoping it's not damaged, but we'll just have to have a look and see. Unfortunately, it's not an easy thing to fix that leak. There's a little bit of welding work needed in this car in this location, and straight away you'll see a little bit of oxidization in on those contacts in there. Now sometimes actually literally just taking the connector off and putting it back on again is enough, but in this case I don't think that's going to be the case. So what we'll do is we'll try and give that a little clean up as best we can with the limited tools I have available here at my parents' house. because I am in the process of moving house, so I don't have everything I need at this moment in time. But even if you look at the pin in the pin in the pump there, that's also looking fairly corroded. So hopefully that's our issue. So let's see if we can get that resurrected. I'm literally just using a little piece of emery here just to give a go. Give this a bit of a clean. Okay, so I've cleaned up the electrical contacts on the pump itself. Now the other thing as well is you'll see these blue air lines running around the car that go into each of the doors, into the boot and over to the fuel filler. They have to be completely intact right the way around the car, or the system just won't work. Now what happened is when I actually removed the pump, it popped out, and there's a T-piece there. The air pipe popped out, so there's a T-piece there, so I'm going to just reconnect it into that, and that'll do the trick. So we'll do that now. Okay, so that is the compressor reconnected, and the airline has gone into the T-piece up there. The electrical connection is back on. So let's just try it at the driver's door and see if we have any luck. Nothing. It'll make a pretty obvious noise aside from opening and closing the doors. It sounds like a little compressor actually. So yeah, we'll just have a look and make sure that the switch is indeed being operated in here. Yeah. So okay, so that's not our issue. Either that or further investigation is required. Either that or our pump is dead. So what we can do next is we can try a little bit harder to make sure those connections are clean onto the pump. But what I want to do is I want to see if there are any issues, like if the motor is making noise or something like that, or if it's getting warm in any way or that. So let's have a quick look and see. Now that little valve, that springy doodly firkins on the top of the pump is actually the valve changes between pressure and vacuum. So I'm going to disconnect the electrical connector first of all, okay, and I'm going to just have another look at those connections. When I started this job about 15 minutes ago, it was a lovely sunny day. Now it's starting to rain. Typical Irish weather. But anyway, I've tried cleaning up this pump and the connections on this pump, and we're having no success. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the square cover on the front of it here, which will give us access to the crankshaft for the piston, and that will allow us to just make sure it rotates and it's not seized up. Okay, so I have the cover removed, and first thing you see here is the back of a circuit board, or the bottom of a circuit board, depending on what way you look at it, and that can actually be lifted out of the way. Okay, now there are two things of note here. That is the crankshaft, or the crank there. Okay, so that in this instance is turning fine. There's no resistance or anything like that. Now that doesn't necessarily tell you the motor is alright, but it gives you a fair indication. The other thing of note though is the fact that there are electrical connections in here as well. Okay, this is one of them. Okay, so this lad here and this lad here. Okay, but don't forget that there is also a relay. Okay, now the relay has electrical connections in it, so we need to actually have a look and see if we can clean that up, and hopefully that'll be our issue. I'd nearly put money on it, to be honest with you, that it is the relay, because I'm just looking at the contacts in it and they're looking fairly furry. So yeah, look, we'll just try and get a little bit of emery paper in on that as well, and see if we can get it cleaned. You can see the contact down the bottom. So I'm pushing on the reed there, essentially the switch on the relay, and if those connections are not clean, you're getting nowhere basically. So what you can do is, if you're very careful, you can actually unhook the reed from the relay, and essentially it's held in place by a spring, so you can pull that spring out. It'll stay on the copper wire here, but it'll just basically allow you to lift it out and give you a better opportunity to clean the contacts. So I'm going to do that. Okay, and some relays you can lift out the reed, but in this instance you can't, because there's not enough slack on that little copper wire. You'd have to desolder it, and ain't nobody got time for that. So I'm gonna just clean it in situ anyway, and hopefully that'll do the trick. But like you can see, they're very crusty looking altogether, you know what I mean? So I'll see if I can find something to clean them, to be honest. Okay, so I've cleaned it up as best I can with the limited resources I have available to me. We know the motor's not seized up, and you can feel it's turning nicely there. And I also cleaned those little spuds there as well. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put the circuit board back in, and you just have to make sure that you line the circuit board up with those said spuds and push it down. When you're taking it out, by the way, just make sure you lift it up straight, and so as you don't bend them. Okay, so before we put the cover on, I'm actually going to just go and test it and see if we've had any success. Okay, so it's connected up anyway, so let's see if we have any luck. Oh, just push that in first. Still no life out of it. I nearly put money on it being that relay though, folks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get somebody else to operate the door lock and see if we can hear the relay clicking but the motor not turning, because the relay will still click even if it's not conducting electricity. Okay, so my wife, whose car this is going to operate the button, and we're going to see if the compressor clicks even. So yeah, go ahead and lock it again. Just cycle it a few times. Okay, we're not getting any life at that at all. Okay, so the fact that it's not even clicking would suggest to me there's something else going wrong. Okay, so we're gonna have to go back to basics on this. Okay, so it's a few hours later and I'm back at it now, and I've had a bit of a think, and I'm thinking that the problem is not necessarily with the compressor but may well be with the switch in the door. Now, there are a couple of ways of checking that. Like any switches, all they do is they just make a contact. So what you could do is you could actually short out the switch by taking the electrical connection off and use a piece of metal to bridge the two contacts in the switch, and that'll rule that out. In this case it'd be 3 pins, because there's obviously open and close, and a positive that goes to it as well. So yeah, I mean, the problem is I'm at a bit of a loss, folks, because I don't have a multimeter. Normally what I'd do is I'd dive into this and I'd know quick enough if I was getting if the compressor was working, because I'd use my auto test probe and put power to it and see if it works, and then kind of work backwards from there. But when you don't have the tools you normally have, you just kind of have to work with what you have. So that's basically it. That's where we're at. So yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to now take the connector off the door switch and see how we're looking there. Now it's a bit fiddly because big meat fists, not much room, all of this kind of thing. I think it was the connectors were installed by children. Well, no, they weren't. They were actually installed in the factory before the door card was put on, but you know what I mean. We'll go with that. I think we might be getting a little bit closer to finding a problem. Have a look at this. Now you can see the amount of verdigris on these contacts, and obviously that needs to be cleaned off. That's going to have a big impact on the function of the switch. But I mean, look, we'll try first of all and see if we can make a contact with a screwdriver, and 2 screwdrivers actually, and hopefully that fixes the problem, because if that's all it is, then happy days. Okay, so before I do anything else, I'm going to just try and bridge these contacts. Now, I'm kind of thinking we go with the center to this one here first, and then this one. There you go. And I would imagine it's probably this one too here. They really are in very, very bad condition. Okay, we need to do something to clean those contacts up big time. That is not going to work the way it is. Bearing in mind I am short on tools, the only thing I'm going to be able to do for it at this moment in time is to use a screwdriver to try and scratch some of the corrosion away from the contacts. Now what we will do is if the problem comes back or I can't fix it this time around, we will revisit it, but at least I know where to start. Trying to do this is like trying to wallpaper your hallway through your letterbox. Okay. Now, let's see if we've had any success. Bollocks anyway. That's definitely a problem. It's just what I did didn't cure it. Because when I bridged the contacts, it worked. But only momentarily. See, this could be one of those hateful things that there's more than one problem. For those of you who actually want to see the compressor operating, see that? Now that won't snap back if there's no pressure on the line. Like if you have an open line, it'll just keep on. I think it'll run for about 30 seconds and time out or something like that. That's kind of what the circuitry is for. It's kind of cool though, isn't it? I think it's a great way of doing it in actual fact. I mean, yeah, you can criticise, oh well, it's not working, but this car is 31 years old, so I think we can forgive it for not working. Anyway, look at that. There is the compressor, and the reason it's working in that position is the door switch is now working to close the central locking, but it's not working to open it. So I need to do a bit more. I need to do a bit more fixing, basically. So I think the next step here is actually to take the door card off and take the switch out and check the contacts in the switch, as well as cleaning the contacts in the connectors and all that as well. So there's a bit to be done, and I'm losing the light here, so I'm going to have to pick this up another day. But through the miracle of editing, you'll never know. I'll talk to you soon. Alright, that's enough of working on the driveway. Welcome to my new abode, folks. Yes, this garage looks like a bomb hit it because we're still in the throes of kind of getting our stuff moved in, but it's a big double garage and I can work on cars inside it, so I am a very, very, very happy man. So anyway, without further ado, let's get back into fixing the central locking on this car. Okay, so now that I have my auto test probe, which is a very, very handy little gizmo, I can now test out the motor. So basically, the way this works, just briefly, is you have a button here. If you press it negative, it puts a ground to the tip there. If you put it this way, it puts 12 volts to the tip. And you also have a negative here as well. So you can use that for basically if you want to complete a circuit. But what you can do is if you don't press the button at all, and you probe one of these. So we now know I have a ground in the middle there, right? But what I can do is, if I put that in on this side, and I give it 12 volts, it should work. And it doesn't. Okay, so that means that there's something wrong with the pump itself. A simple way of finding out, basically. And these auto test probes are not expensive, by the way. If you're going to be doing a lot of work on car electrics, or even a little bit of work on car electrics, they're a very worthwhile investment. So what we can do now is, taking the electrical connector off, I can now use the negative on this. I think it looks like it got driven over or something like that. But there's a crocodile clip here, which I can now clip onto the center terminal on the pump, and give it 12 volts and see what happens. And that's after I try and straighten it out, unfortunately. Oh yeah, that's a bit better now. So let's connect that up there in the center one, and we'll take the positively, put positive on this one here. Nothing. Nothing. All right. Alright, so we've got a bit of a problem internally with this. So now I need to get back into the insides of this. I still suspect that relay is the problem, you know that? Now we're gonna check that with a multimeter now in a minute, but first of all what I'm gonna do is these wires here, it would seem, are for the motor itself. Or not. Yeah, they are. They're for the motor. So I'm actually going to power them, and I'm going to see if the motor comes to life. It should do, because it was working there a minute ago. Again, the auto test probe comes in useful here. It's connected to the car battery in the Golf, by the way. That's where it's getting its 12 volts from in the first place. So it's seeing a circuit there through the motor. Okay, the compressor part of it is working absolutely fine, so that's that rules out the motor. So it's going to be something to do with either the switches in here for changing over the whether or not it produces a vacuum or pressure, or it's going to be on the circuit board here. Now, as I said, I still strongly suspect this relay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to be able to check and see if there's continuity between there and there, or when you push it over the other way, if it goes the other way. So let's see. Actually, you know what we're going to do? Test probe is tangled up in a picture frame. How many YouTubers say that? Right, so let's pop this on here and give it 12 volts and see if the relay operates. Maybe if we actually put the board back onto the contacts for the motor, although I don't see why that should make a difference. The relay itself should still operate. Right, so what I'm doing here now is I'm actually going to try and take off this piece here and see what's going on underneath it, because I strongly suspect there's some electrical connections in there too. I just want to make sure they're not covered in verdigris or corrosion, whatever way you want to call it. Where the hell did that go? Yes, there are electrical connections in here. I was kind of afraid of that happening. The entire gubbins from the inside of this is after flying out. So now I'm just trying to install everything back where it's supposed to go. So that's that. Do you ever take something apart and really wish you hadn't? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean the connections on this little micro switch here. You know, the connections do look quite furry on this, so I strongly suspect that this may be something to do with our problem. I now need to find that little red O-ring again, because it jumped ship on me again. This time I didn't see where it went, so that could cause me problems as well. I have other O-rings if I need to put another one in, but still. Okay, so we're back now, and I brought my young lad behind me here over. Isn't that right?
That's it. What's that called?
What do you think it's called?
Is a 60.
Is it a compressor?
Yeah.
It's the compressor, yeah. Yeah. So, right, what we're going to do now is we're going to test it, because I put it back together off camera and fumbled it a bit, but it's all back together. So let's see how it works. Okay, so with my trusty auto test probe, we're going to have a look and see what the state of play is now. So got power on it. The auto test probe has lights on it as well, which is also handy. So let's see now. So what we need to do now is, it's not going to work now because, there you go. Okay, so now if I put it on this side, it shouldn't work. Okay, so let's see now what happens if we block the line. Nothing. It's making sod all pressure. So I must have put something wrong, something inside there together wrong. So I'm going to crack it open again and have a look. At least this time I know that the gubbins will all fall out all over the place, so I'll be a little bit more careful. There's a dog bowl on the ground there, which I'm going to put everything in. Okay, so I've got it all back together again for like the, I don't know, 127th time at this stage, and I'm still not fully convinced it's not that the part of the problem I'm having is not that relay in there. I mean, it's not the entirety of the problem because we're getting places, but we're still not there. So I'm going to try and just clean those contacts again in there and see if that makes any difference. And if it doesn't, then said the tree to the lumberjack, I'm stumped. It's finicky, you know. I mean, you can't even really get in at the contacts, and God knows where my contact cleaner spray is. So it kind of makes it a little difficult to take care of this. Well folks, once again Niall Clark came to the rescue and I now have a new compressor. And the first thing I notice about it is it has this little green cover over the top piece, which would actually stop water from getting into it, thereby preventing the problem that actually occurred in the first instance. So that's obviously something that was missing on the old one. So anyway, without further ado, let's get this one fitted. Okay, so first thing to do is we just pop our little rubber hose on here. Niall was decent enough to send me the foam surround that actually goes around it as well. But before we put that on, I'm going to literally just connect it all up and make sure it's all working satisfactorily. Okay, it is a second-hand part, folks, you know, I mean, these things happen to the best of us, but still though, we're testing. So there we go, so it's plugged in and connected up, vacuum lines are all on. So now I'm going to turn the key in the lock and we're going to see what happens. Now here's the foam surround, so that just pops in there like that. Sits into this recess underneath the rear light cluster. And there's an elastic boogaloo that comes across when you put the top cover on and holds it in place. Very simple and very effective. Why over-engineer these things, folks, you know? There you go. Now, I know there's a twist in it, but I'll take that twist out. It's obviously just twisted at the other end. So that's where the air conditioning compressor lives in the back of the car now. So let's just test it out one more time. And obviously, being that it's in this enclosure, it'll be that much quieter. Not that the noise would ever really bother me, to tell you the truth. There you go. I'm rarely the type of person who'll just load up the parts cannon and just throw everything at something to get it to work. So that's why I wanted to try and find out if the compressor I had was salvageable. And to be honest with you, if I was going to get into the electronics on the board, probably yes it would, but I'm not going to do that. And to be honest with you, for €30 second hand, job's a good one. So listen, thanks for watching, folks. We'll leave it there, and please don't forget to smash that subscribe button, guys, and we'll see you in a future video.